xây tương thân tình trong đạo Phật, tùy khác màu nhưng một tôn sư. Hôm nay đây cùng nhau họp mặt, quyết noi theo đường Phật giáo Hoàng Dương.
Nam Mô Yida Phật. This is Sang Nơi Sang Phật, and my name is Sekshiyang Tri. Today we have our guest Tai Ungmin here to join us on our discussion about Buddhism and Dharma. And so kind of the topics I have today is what do you think is the kind of essential point into practicing Buddhism in terms of its source, which we always strive for wisdom. So the wisdom throughout practicing meditation and throughout that, but the wisdom kind of simply put, what is that wisdom that allows us to have hope into becoming a Buddha or to practice Buddhism?
That's a great question. There is a mantra that we as monks, we live by. And that mantra is, only wisdom is the way. Only wisdom is the way. It's the code that we live by, the mantra that we live by, the motto that we live by, whatever you want to call it. That is the backbone of our practice. And we understand that as a role of a monk is that we have to live by wisdom, to develop wisdom, to learn the wisdom, to develop the wisdom, and to live with wisdom. When we practice that, and then on our path towards enlightenment is just to develop wisdom. Because wisdom is the opposite of ignorance. And through ignorance drives greed and anger. And so because of ignorance, there is greed and there's anger. Eliminate ignorance, there's no more greed, there's no more anger. And so our goal is for us to develop wisdom. And so there's a difference between worldly wisdom and Buddha wisdom. Worldly wisdom is, say for example, you became an apprentice plumber, right? And then later on you become a plumber yourself. And then you become a master plumber, right? So your knowledge, your experience becomes wisdom. You become wise in your field of practice.
Right.
Right? But that's different from the wisdom that the Buddha taught, that only wisdom is the way. Of the wisdom that the Buddha taught here is observing and knowing the existence of the laws of cause and effect and see how it works. Understanding the laws of no self. Understanding the laws of impermanence. And knowing that the world is suffering. Basically, to cut that down, I said 4, but in reality, there's 3, the 3 marks of existence.
I see.
Right? So when you understand the 3 marks of existence, you understand that there's no reason for us to attach ourselves to anything.
Right, no attachment.
The more we attach ourselves to something,
the more it leads us.
The more we set up ourselves to become more, to suffer more.
But also, when you say that, sometimes it may hear on some ears in a pessimistic way. How come, saying it first as somebody else, how can me loving this cat lead me to suffering then?
I understand how anyone would do that, how anyone would say that. If you're a pet, you love your cat, you love your dog,
right? How
can that lead to suffering? Right? You love the cat, but one day the cat's going to die.
Oh, that's then.
And then we're going to suffer. For example, at our temple, we had a cat named Garona, that lived with us since 2001. And on, what was it, May 10th?
Yes.
It was May 10th, 2017, just a couple of weeks ago, he passed away. And so even though we're as monks, losing our pet was a little bit, it was sad.
But the wisdom.
But the wisdom of knowing that all things are impermanent makes the departure or the death
it makes it more
not so sad. You can still feel the grief, but we're not overtaken by the anger or the grief of it. But we see all things as it is. The wisdom here is seeing all things as it is. Right. Understanding the laws of cause and effect. A bodhisattva is always worried about the cause, whereas sentient beings worry about the effect.
Right.
Because sentient beings, they do things through ignorance, and they're always worried about getting caught, the effect of it.
Right.
Whereas a bodhisattva or someone that's enlightened, they see that all effect derives from a cause. If there is a cause, there is an effect. If there is no cause, there is no effect. So an enlightened being worries more of the cause. And so we have to understand and see things before we think about something, before we say something, or before we do something. We always have to observe what we need to do and make sure our thoughts, our speech, our actions are in the right way,
Right.
not in the wrong way. And so we have to learn. That's developing the wisdom.
So we hone in on all that to concentrate on the ever so fleeting or eternal present moment. And as we become honed in and become more wise, then we're able to accept consequences as they are, for it has already been done. And then as you accept those kind of mishappenings, and there's only room for you to move forward, because, thanks to that worldly, or not the worldly, but the eternal wisdom that spirituality offers, and we're able to kind of see things in a brighter way, because certain things we can't control at all.
Yeah.
It happens to us. And why waste all your energy and all your effort onto dwelling on just situations that, even though you could control or not control, those things have already situated.
Yeah.
And so, as you say, as a bodhisattva, to consider causes, where you're only reaping causes of negativity and depression if you're sowing causes of negativity, depression. But as you take a glance into penetrating that kind of light, you kind of see more between a hopeful sense of what's there to come, even during now, as you get older, as you get sicker, and even as your deathbed. Because if you practice finding wisdom as your answer, and those things generally stray you to understand that we're all here not wanting to pass on, so we don't want to inflict pain on others. Like we read in our Sunday sermons, like we wish to, when one ponders about destruction, one also doesn't want to be destroyed himself. So you kind of live in a way where it's more harmonious with ourselves. And so as we kind of see wisdom in terms of that little thing, how do you figure it grows into, if we can affect this with many people, how can we have that light shown to others? What means or methods do you think can have us practice it and have us also spread what we know, like besides the internet? Because sometimes I feel internet is all scattered, and we don't have a source of anything or any type of.
There needs to be like a
what's
program.
your vision too?
Right, and my vision is to create a program, create like a system where they walk in and there is a path for them to walk on, and then they come out. And from the beginning, from they walk in, not knowing anything, from when they walk out, I wouldn't say they know everything, but they're given the fundamentals enough for them to figure out on their own what they need to do. Because Buddhism, yes, I can teach Buddhism. We can teach Buddhism. But Buddhism is not something that you just learn. Buddhism is something you learn, but you practice. And from your own practice, you experience it.
Yeah.
That's what makes Buddhism Buddhism. It's not something you've learned just from the internet. Yeah, that's one thing. But the other part is to practice it enough for you to gain experience from it. And once you experience the Dharma, then you take your experience and you share with other people. Through my life that I've learned in the past 24 years is that I've learned the basics at a very, very young age, and I see what works and what does not work in this American culture, right? And one thing I know that works for sure that everyone should practice is mindfulness, breathing meditation, and learning how to concentrate your mind, learning how to settle your mind to the point where it's at complete calmness, right? And then you observe the sensations inside your body, and experience mindfulness.
So we're at a movement, in a movement where it's a movement, but it's a movement of stillness. And so as we kind of encroach upon each one of us, from children to adults to elderly, trying to practice that stillness of the mind. And then there's tons and tons of more benefits that would allow a student to become older and to become aware of his decisions, where he wants to lead himself.
Yes.
Or for maybe a person that's in marriage or older that knows, all right, this is the time for a child, this is what I want to do.
Yes.
And for someone older. So thank you very much for that. And right now it's our first break.
Yes.
Xây tương thân tình trong đạo Phật, tùy khác màu nhưng một tôn sư. Hôm nay đây cùng